Hello, boys and girls. My name is Sergey Gusev. Today, I want to continue talking about portrait painting, and I will show how to paint a portrait in oils. So let's begin. First of all, I'm going to use paper as a surface, not canvas, but uh, I don't think there is a big difference between primed paper and primed canvas. So I chose paper just because it is less textured and it's much better to film, and because it's a little bit difficult sometimes to film canvas and get fine quality. Anyways, if you want to paint on a canvas, then go ahead. There is no difference at all. If you want to have a really smooth texture, I mean smooth surface, you can take a panel or paper also, or just a very smooth canvas. So it's up to you. The first thing I do is a quick light sketch on paper, and I'm going to use a graphite pencil, an HB graphite pencil, or it can be a B graphite pencil, or maybe even a 2B graphite pencil, but I don't recommend to use anything really dark because it can make your surface a little bit dirty or too dark, too black, and we don't need that. So I'm making a quick, very light sketch, and I care mostly for good composition and the right proportions. So don't forget to look time by time at your model or at the photograph, uh, if you're using a photograph for the painting, and always measure the big proportions. It's really important to set up the right proportions on this step because if you don't make them look correct, you will make a lot of mistakes in the future. So when you paint, you will have to correct proportions, and it's much more difficult than when you make the right proportions in the beginning. So I recommend you to spend maybe 20-30 minutes at least to make a sketch, but I believe you need 1 hour or maybe 2-3 hours. It depends on your experience and maybe on what you want. Maybe you have your own taste and you would like to make a really detailed under drawing. I make a really simple sketch. I don't want to draw a lot because I'll paint a lot. I will make a really detailed painting, and I will spend a lot of time to paint. So I don't want to spend a lot of time to make under drawing. But it's up to you guys. If you want to make a really well done drawing, if you want to spend time, then go ahead. I'm sure it's gonna help you a lot if you have a very good under drawing. And right now you can see that my under drawing is almost finished. Um, I drew a few details. I didn't spend a lot of time on drawing them because, as I mentioned, I will have a lot of time to paint and to finish every detail. And right now I'm going to make underpainting. If you watched my previous videos, I was talking a little bit about making underdrawing and making underpainting, so I'm sure you know a little bit about that. So underpainting is the first layer of paints. There are a few ways to make it, and I'm going to show a very simple one. I don't like to use white paint to make underpainting because sometimes it makes colors muddy and it takes time to dry. So I would like to use no white at all. And right now you can see I'm mixing ochre yellow, sienna burnt, and amber raw to make a nice, a little bit yellowish, a little bit brownish tone to make underpainting. It's a very simple way because I'm using only one tone. Um, I'm not going to paint with lots of paints, with lots of colors. So actually you can take, let's say, amber burnt or amber raw, or maybe paint you really like, something dark in my opinion. Use a lot of medium and um, make the first layer very transparent, and I recommend to think more and care mostly about the values. So just look at your model or a photograph and just try to find the darkest spots. Usually the shadows on the hair or the shadows on the clothes are the darkest, so you can begin from the shadows on the clothes, or maybe just hair if the shadows on the hair are really dark. So in my opinion, it's the most simple way when you surround a face, a portrait with dark tones, dark colors. Then it's really easy to see the skin tones, because the skin tones are usually very light, and sometimes they're really close to white. They're never white, of course, but sometimes they're close in the highlights. And if you have white surface, white canvas, or in my case it's paper, it's going to be a little bit too difficult to see the skin tones because they are light and the paper is light. And if you have dark spots around, dark backgrounds or dark clothes or hair or anything else, it's going to help you a lot. And I'm sure you'll note that it's much easier to paint skin tones when the head is surrounded um, with something dark, like, for example, the dark backgrounds. So, in my opinion, it's much easier to begin from the dark spots. And I begin from the hair. Um, I'm using a small synthetic brush and a lot of medium. I like to mix turpentine with linseed oil and demo varnish to get a really nice medium, which dries quickly, but not too quick. And um, if you want to make it dry quicker, you can add just more varnish, or if you don't want, just you can add a little more oil. It's pretty simple. Let's talk a little bit about my palette. You saw my palette. I chose really simple colors. They are very basic, and usually they're called a limited palette. So when you have a few colors, let's say 5, 6, or maximum 10, it's a few colors and it's a limited palette. I think it's a great idea and great experience, especially for beginners, to use a few colors and try to look for as many tints as possible, just mixing a few paints. Then buy a lot of colors in art stores, have tons of them on your palette, and then have no idea how to mix them, how to get the right color, the right tone. So it's gonna be easier for you to have 5, 6 paints. I think I have 6, and you saw them. First of all, I use titanium white. I use cadmium lemon, cadmium red, sienna burnt, ochre yellow, amber raw, and ultramarine. Of course, if you're painting something bright or you're working on a landscape, then I think you need, or you might need, some other colors, brighter colors, for example, to paint sky or some greens. You need, of course, to add some brighter colors into your palette, but for portraits, for skin tones, I'm sure you don't need too many colors. I think 5, 6 is enough. And today I will show how I paint a portrait using only 6 paints. And then you can decide if you like it or not, and you can add some other colors. Maybe you have your favorite ones, and I don't mind, of course. And I don't insist on using the same technique and the same paint, the same brushes. I think you should do what you want, and maybe you can find some useful information in my video, and it's simply great, of course. Anyways, right now I'm working on the underpainting and mostly on the hair. You see, it's very simple. I don't paint them really well. It's kind of rough, and mostly I think about big spots. So you can see right now the hair is one big spot, one color, something brownish, a little red, I'm sorry, a little yellowish, and it's okay. Then in the future I will have enough time to paint, to work on the details, to use a really tiny brush and finish every detail. So right now I care mostly about the values. So actually right now I'm drawing with a brush. I continue to work on the tonal values, but I'm using colors, I'm using paints, I'm using a medium, but actually it's a continuation of my anti-drawing. It's also, in my opinion, very important to paint shadows in the beginning and begin again from the darkest shadows. And the darkest shadows are usually in the eye sockets or in the nostrils. So don't forget to paint them even a little bit. You don't have to finish anything right now. Just a few brush strokes around here, around there. It's really, really fine. And when you begin to paint their shadows, you will see the volume much better. You will see that some parts begin volumetric, and right now the nose looks more real, more realistic. And then I'm making a few brush strokes in the eyes. I painted the pupils of the eyes, the irises. By the way, the pupils are usually really dark and they're simply black usually, but sometimes they have highlights on the cornea. And because of the highlights, they don't look so black. So they look like, something with a bluish tint because of the light source. But actually they're simply black because there is no light at all inside. Light doesn't get through it. And when you paint, I suggest to always compare what you paint. Let me explain. So if you're working on the shadows, you can and you should compare the shadows of the face with something really dark to understand how dark or how light the shadows are. Because shadows on the face, they're usually not, they're not black. They're really, really far from being simply black. So if you don't want to make them dirty or brownish or something dark and colorless, you should compare them with something something black. And the pupils of the eyes are usually simply black. So when you paint a shadow under the nose, let's say, just time by time look at the pupils. So you will see that the pupils are black and the shadows are really much lighter. And it's going to help you a lot to make the right tonal values. When you paint the lights, you can compare them with uh, something white, and you will see that the skin tones are much darker than pure white. I think it's a great trick which helps a lot to see the right values and also the right colors. And right now I'm painting the lips a little bit, and then I paint the hair again. So I paint here and there a little bit, a few brush strokes around here on the neck, and we can see the volume much better now. But actually I made just a few brush strokes. I didn't paint a lot, but it works. Also remember to paint the clothes a little bit, maybe the backgrounds. Some artists like to make a really well done under drawing with lots of lines, with tone and so on. I don't mind, of course, but I also remember that we paint a real person, and I don't like to make it looking like a robot or something made of plaster. And that is why I don't like to draw on the face a lot of planes and show uh, how they turn away or toward the light source. I think we should keep it in mind. But of course, I have to admit that if you're a beginner and if you don't have a lot of experience in painting portraits or drawing heads, and you don't understand, you don't know a lot about the big planes of the head, of course, I think it would be great for you to make some sketches, to make smaller drawings and try to find out um, how the head looks like. I mean, all those big planes, um, how they turn away or toward the light source, how they become darker or light, and also make some drawings, some studies of the facial details, and try to find out how they work, how they look like, and so on. I don't really like to draw, um, to that kind of anatomy on the face when working on portraits. I prefer to keep it in mind, but of course we have to know, we have to demonstrate it. And right now I keep on painting the face and working on the skin, painting the shadows. Uh, just remember that the lights are always much lighter than the shadows. It's a basic rule you have to remember when you draw, when you paint. There is always a big difference between the lights and shadows. So when you work on shadows, remember to make them darker than the lights and to always compare them with the lights. Otherwise, you can make mistakes. And I'm almost done with the underpainting. It's very simple, you can see it. I didn't use lots of paints. It looks rough, it looks very quick, but again, um, when we're going to work on a really detailed portrait and spend a lot of time, I think it's not so important to make a really long underdrawing or underpaint. So I think, in my opinion, it's much better to spend more time to paint. I don't like to use, and I never use white paints to make underpainting. And I'm sure if you read something about the old masters, you know that they like to make a really good underpainting and then use it. Uh, and some parts they didn't paint over. So when we go to museums, we can see that in the shadows, they didn't paint over the underpainting, and a few places are not painted over. So we can see the colors they used, and it looks great when you have a really thin, transparent underpainting, and then you have a thicker layer of paints next to it, and it looks really great, this difference in texture. So just keep in mind that you don't have to paint everything. Um, you can leave a few parts um, like that, transparent, and you don't have to paint over it. It will look different, and um, if you have a lot of different things, if you combine techniques, it looks much more interesting. And right now, I make the overpainting. It's the next layer, and right now I'm using white paint as well. And um, right now I'm working on the eye, and I decided to, to paint a little bit longer this eye. I'm working with a small synthetic brush, very pointed. And when I paint, I also draw. So I care also for the shape, for the silhouette, for the structure of the eye. And I don't like to finish anything right away. I think it's much better to begin um, with big spots, and right now I'm working with big spots. So you can see I painted the eye a little bit, then I'm working on the skin tones around it. So I'm painting the shadows in the eye socket, and I remember to make them darker than the lights. And you can see my palette and what I mix for the shadows. So basically I mix sienna burnt with a little ultramarine, sometimes with cadmium lemon, and I add a tiny bit of white, even for the shadows, because they're really light, they're really transparent in this painting. So I have to add a little bit white paint as well. Well, you can see right now I'm drawing a little bit with my brush, so sometimes we have to go back and spend some time to correct the big things, the big shapes, big silhouettes, to draw a little bit and make sure that the proportions are right, and so on. And when you paint, guys, um, I, I suggest you to remember about the light source. I always talk about the light source, and in my opinion, it's really important. And when you begin to paint, try to find out where the light comes from. It's very simple. Usually it comes from above. Usually the light source is cold. And it makes the skin tones, or of course other subjects around, and also clothes, the hair and so on, to make them look cold, and the shadows are warm. And to make a good painting, you have to remember about that. You should remember that the planes of the head, which are turned to the light source, are lighter, and they're also cold, and the planes which are turned away are warmer and darker. It's a very simple thing, but it's really important. And if you understand it and apply in your paintings, you will see uh, how important it is, um, how much better painting you get when you demonstrate this difference in colors. So just always remember and try to find out before you begin to paint. Try to find out where the light comes from and which parts are light. Usually the forehead and the tip of the nose are lighter because they're closer to the light source. So they're lighter and colder, and therefore you have to use lighter colors, of course, and colder colors. I don't mean, of course, to use pure ultramarine or, cadmium lemon or lots of white, no. But you have to see the difference between the colors. You have to look at the forehead and then to look at the side plane of the cheek, for example, or on the chin. And you will see that other parts of the head, they're much darker, or not much darker, but they're darker and warmer. Sometimes it's not so obvious, but when you know about that, you will see it. So just look at your model and find out where the light comes from. When you understand it, you will see that the part of the head which is closer to the light source is lighter and colder, and you have to use white, ultramarine, cadmium, lemon for the forehead. Then look at the cheeks, at their side planes of the head, and you will see that they are warmer, and they have reddish tones, and you have to use less white and a little more maybe sienna burnt or maybe cadmium red. Just don't use too much. Don't make them completely red, just pure cadmium red. No, they're a little bit warmer, they're a little bit reddish, and the forehead is usually kind of yellowish, cold yellowish. Then when you see on the chin, for example, you'll see that it's darker and warmer. And if you compare it with the forehead, you will see that you have to use less white and more warm tints, maybe more ochre or a little sienna burnt. But I don't recommend you to use amber raw or amber burnt or any brown or black colors for the skin tones. I think it's a little bit dangerous because you can make the muddy dirty and simply grayish black or something like that. So skin tones are very light. They combine warm and cold tints, and if you use brown colors, I think the skin tones are going to look just simply dirty and not interesting, not picturesque at all. So I wouldn't do that, and I don't use any of that colors to paint the skin tones. I like to use amber raw, and I think it's a really nice color, but you have to know how to use it and where to use it. You can use it for the shadows, for the, backgrounds maybe. But I don't recommend you to use it for the skin tones, and maybe I wouldn't use it even for the shadows on the face. And right now I'm working on the nose. Um, with a small synthetic brush. I try to paint and draw at the same time, so I keep in mind the nose construction. And when I paint, I have to demonstrate that it has a few planes, and it has four basic planes: the frontal one, two side planes, and a lower plane. So I try to show the tonal difference between them. Because if you make the shadows very light, when they become really close to the lights, you will get a really flat image without volume. And we of course have to show that the head is volumetric and that the details of the head have their own volumes too. And you can note that I'm using cold colors for the skin. And right now you can see the underpainting, which is warmer. And then I paint over with the lighter and colder tint. So I'm using white, I'm using ultramarine, I'm using a little bit cadmium red, and I get those um, cold, a little bluish, a little reddish tones, which I think fit the face very much. And basically I use synthetic brushes, especially when I have to paint, detailed portraits. And for example, when I'm painting a portrait of a girl, um, when I have to paint the skin tones really smooth and soft, I use soft synthetic brushes, but sometimes I like to paint with bristles, and I will show in my next video how I begin a painting with, really rough brushes. But for this painting, I think I don't need really big, really rough brushes. I think I'm going to paint with small, soft synthetics. But again, it's up to you guys. If you have your own taste, and I'm sure you have your own experience, so go ahead and choose what you want, what you like. Again, I don't insist on using the same uh, instruction. I'm just giving a few tips which might be helpful for some of you. And right now I'm working on the forehead a little bit. And by the way, right now you can see that um, the forehead is half white, and um, you can see that the skin tones are much darker than pure white. So we are not using pure white. Even when we paint the sclera of the eyes, we don't use pure white. Maybe sometimes we can make the highlights in the eyes using more white. I don't like to use a lot of medium. Um, I think it's better to paint thicker, and not too much, of course, but not too runny. Because when you have enough paints on your brush, it's easier to sculpt, to, build the volume, to work on the planes and so on. I never recommend to paint details from the beginning, but sometimes I like to, to paint a few details and have one part of the head a little bit more finished. Like for example, right now I have one eye a little more finished than anything else in this head. I even painted a few eyelashes and made the highlights and so on. And right now I'm working on the other eye, just a little bit, mostly drawing. You can notice that the skin tones look really cold now, and it's really easy to compare what you see right now, to compare the overpainting, which I made using ultramarine, titanium white, and a little cadmium red, and the underpainting where I didn't use white or ultramarine or any cold colors. So you can note that the underpainting is very warm, and um, the overpainting is very light and very cold. But actually, when you're painting, it's really important to show that some parts are warm and some parts are cold. That's why you have to remember about um, the light source, which makes some parts colder, some parts darker and warmer. And right now you can see that I painted the backgrounds and I made the background dark. And I think it's easier to paint skin tones, light skin tones on the dark backgrounds because you can see them much better. And even if you have, for example, a photograph, a model um, on a light background, I would recommend to make it a little darker and for sure not simply white. Um, it's a little bit difficult to paint skin tones on light or white backgrounds. So I think if you're a beginner and if you don't have a lot of experience in portraits, so I would recommend you to paint dark backgrounds and then uh, concentrate more on the skin tones. And you can see that I worked a lot on the skin tones. I painted the forehead, and I think um, you can see that it's colder, it's lighter, and some parts, the lightest part of the forehead are painted with ultramarine, with titanium white, and maybe a tiny bit of ochre, yellow, or cadmium lemon, which I like better than ochre. And you can also notice that the shadows are darker and warmer. And if you look, first of all, at the shadows and then quickly at their um, light, so at the forehead, for example, you can notice that the forehead forehead is lighter and the shadows, for example, in the eye sockets or on the side plane of the head, they're darker and they're warmer. I also painted the hair, and um, for the shadows I used amber raw and a little ultramarine with sienna burnt. For the light places I used ochre yellow with ultramarine with amber raw and a little white. And right now I'm working on the ear, making it look more realistic. When you paint the ear, just remember that it's further away, and therefore you have to paint it a little bit softer. No sharp edges at all. It's a little bit lighter than the side plane of the face because it turns more to the light source, and therefore it's a little bit cold as well. And right now I'm working on the hair, making it more detailed. I'm using a really tiny synthetic small pointed brush. I also remember to draw because the hair has its own volume. So it's not just something flat and dark. It becomes lighter and colder again in the lights and darker in the semitones and shadows and also warmer. So remember about that. I think you don't have to paint the hair um, very detailed in the beginning because it's not the main part of the head. But when you paint the eyes and the nose, the lips, and you have time and you want to work more and make your painting more realistic and finished, then you can go ahead and work on the hair and get a tiny brush in your hands and paint every part. Just spend time and make it as real and as finished as you want. But it's gonna look really strange if you don't have a really well done face and the eyes don't look realistic and they're not finished, they're not well drawn, and then you spend a lot of time working on the hair. We have to remember about the things we have to finish first, and then if we have time, uh, we can make the other parts also well done. So you can see right now the face is almost finished, but of course I have to make some final brush strokes and maybe a few corrections. But right now I can relax a little bit and paint some other parts like the hair, for example. Then I will paint the clothes and the earrings, the necklace, and so on. But first of all, of course, you have to think about the basic things, about the um, main details, about the eyes, how to draw them well, how to make them look realistic. And only after that you can um, work on some other parts of the head. For the hair, I used mostly ochre yellow with titanium white, for the lights and a little ultramarine. And for the shadows, I mixed amber raw um, with ochre yellow, and sometimes I added a tiny bit of sienna burnt. And you can see I didn't finish the hair, so I worked a little bit on the hair, and now I think I have to correct a few things on the face, and I go back and I draw again with my brush, and I correct the eyes. I work more on the irises, on the shape. You can see right now I'm literally drawing. I'm not even painting, but I'm correcting the shape of the eye with a really, really small brush, and mostly care for the right values right now. So the colors look fine, and I need to draw a little bit more and correct the shape. Um, I should make it look, first of all, realistic and correct, but also it should look like the eye of the person I'm painting. So not an eye um, of another person, of course. It should look like the person you paint. Just adding more reflection into the iris. I have a few videos on my channel where I'm talking about the eye drawing and the eye painting, and um, usually I talk about the eye structure, and uh, to paint or to draw a realistic eye, you have to remember that it is basically a sphere. I always talk about that, I repeat it many times, but you have to remember, you have to learn it, that it's a sphere, and that is why it has its own volume. And we can't paint the eye simply white, because the sclera also turns away from the light source or toward the light source, and therefore it gets lighter or darker, and that is how we see the eye's volume. And right now I'm working on the necklace, just making a few brush strokes around there. It's not the most important detail, of course, but my goal was to make a really finished painting with lots of details, and therefore I decided to paint these earrings and the necklace and these tiny roses on the clothes, just to make them look really finished and really well done. And of course it takes time, but we also learn this way, because if we make really quick sketches, we we learn a lot, of course, but if you want to learn how to finish portraits, how to make them look really realistic and well done and classical and so on, uh, we have to um, finish them. We have to work on the details. We have to spend time. We have to take a tiny brush and draw, and paint, and then go back to the drawing site and correct it a lot, and then paint it, and so on and so on. So it takes, I think, 12 or maybe even a little more hours to paint this portrait. I believe that if you can paint well-looking portrait, you will learn a lot. You will learn a lot how to work on the details, how to finish the eyes, how to finish the lips, and so on and so on. And um, working on the necklace, I correct its shape with this blue color because it's very important to make the big silhouettes look alike. Because usually we see, uh, first of all, we see the big things, the big spots, and if the shape of the necklace uh, looks correct, um, then it's okay. Then we can spend time and finish the details, and it will look even better, even more realistic. But if the big spot, if the big silhouette of the necklace looks strange, the shape is wrong and the color is wrong, then you can spend many hours working on it and paint a lot of reflections, a lot of highlights. But if the big spot uh, looks, ugly or just wrong, those details won't help you. That is why I always tell you to begin from the big spots, because that is what we see first of all. And then when we get closer to the paints and we can see all these details, all these flowers on the clothes. But let's say if you paint the shoulders really narrow, then this is what we will see for sure. It will look really ridiculous, really strange, really wrong. And from a big distance, when we don't see lots of details, we will see that the shoulders are really narrow or that the nose is too long. You can paint lots of details, the highlights, the reflections in the shadows, but if these big things, if the big proportion, the big silhouettes are wrong, all those details, they won't help you a lot. But if the big things look uh, correct, then you can spend time, you can draw a lot, you can paint, you can paint really tiny things. You can paint highlights, you can paint reflections on the earrings, and then it's gonna look really amazing. I'm finishing this portrait. Um, you know, I filmed a lot, and I think it's really difficult to talk about everything in one video and to talk about everything at the same time. So I would like you to comment a lot and just say what you think. Say what is wrong, what is good. Uh, if you have any questions, I would like to answer them and maybe make smaller videos based on this portrait and talk more about, something special, maybe about my palette or my brushes, mediums, anything. Um, because I would like to show more and help you if I can. And so if you have questions, any offers, any great ideas, just please leave them down here in the comments. I will read. Maybe I don't have time to answer all of them, but believe me, I read all of them and I do appreciate your opinion. It's really important for me. And I will try to answer them in my upcoming videos and talk more about um, the things you are interested in. And right now I'm making the final touch-ups and using my really tiny synthetic brush. I'm working on the hair, just making them a little more finished, more realistic. when I'm working on these small tiny details, usually I use more medium to make the paint thinner, and it's more comfortable for me to finish details. Just painting a few single hair. I really hope this video was helpful for you. You know, it's difficult to say everything I could, and it's really difficult to teach you via tutorials. That is why I recommend you to draw more and paint more and get more experience. Of course, I can give you some tips, and I try to do my best and talk a lot about painting and drawing and giving you some tips or ideas. But anyways, guys, if you want to learn how to paint, how to draw, if you want to get really great results, just remember that the only thing which can help you, and it will help you for sure, is your experience. So the more you draw and paint, the better it goes. The more results you will get. So just remember to practice a lot. Just you don't have to paint something really finished and spend lots of time to paint uh, details and to paint something like these tiny small flowers on the clothes like I did. Maybe you don't need that, but try to make some sketches, some quicker drawings, quicker studies, paintings on paper, canvas, panels. Don't care a lot about small things about which mediums to use or which brushes to choose. You can do whatever you want actually. You can take any brush, you can take any medium, any paints, you can take 5 paints, 5 colors, or next time you can use 3 or maybe 15. You need to find out what fits you, what you like, because I can give you a lot of tips and suggestions, but uh, they mostly fit me, and that is what I like, what I found out through my experience. But maybe you need something else. We all have different tastes, so don't remember to draw and you know not only watch, not only read, but practice, practice, and then I can guarantee you, you will succeed a lot. You will improve your skills very quickly. I'm giving the final brush strokes, and I actually can continue and paint more and more and make it look more detailed, more finished. But I think at some point we have to stop and just start another painting. And I think I'm satisfied with this portrait, and I made it look like I wanted. So I'm just finishing a few details, and mostly that's it. I hope you like this painting, and if you could share it, that would be really nice. It would help me a lot. If you could share this video in your favorite social network with your friends, maybe they're interested in this tutorial as well. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Uh, I'm making new videos and a few more portraits are coming out soon. So if you subscribe, you won't miss out on them. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I wish you good luck with your paintings and drawings. Remember to paint more and draw more. And see you soon.